Hi, welcome back to Connection Group for week 3 of One Hit Wonders. I'm with James. James, do you have a favorite one hit wonder?
I do. My favorite one-hit wonder is Hey Jealousy by the Gin Blossoms.
My heart just grew like the Grinch, like it just grew.
3 sizes.
Because, wait a second, they've had more hits than that.
No, I don't think so much.
I think they did. They're the greatest band of all time.
I don't know about that.
We're going to argue about that later. But this is week 3, and we're talking about those moments in the Bible where people show up, they do something pretty incredible, and then they're gone. The one-hit wonders of the Bible. And we're going to focus on the story of Jonah, and James is going to tell that story.
As we dive into one-hit wonders, we get to look at this story of a guy named Jonah. And this story is a fantastic story, and it's fantastical, and there's elements of it that are kind of crazy. Some of you may have grown up with this story, grown up hearing this story, or maybe you heard it as a legend or a myth. But right now we want to unpack the details and really get you to see the principles inside of this story of Jonah. And so we have this guy that we really only hear a little bit about. Picture him as an everyman. In cinema, that's the term that they use for someone that you can just kind of see and you relate to him. A Tom Hanks kind of person, a Will Smith kind of person. Maybe a Chris Pratt before he became a superhero. But we look at Jonah and he's sitting there at home and he gets this call from God. God says, Jonah, I want you to go to these people in a city called Nineveh. And now, Nineveh was a city that was known for being kind of a bad place. It was known for its wickedness. Maybe for you, you don't go shopping even in San Bernardino because you think of that as a place that you just don't want to go to. Or maybe it's the heart of downtown Los Angeles that you just go, oh man, I would get kind of uneasy to go there. Maybe, what if God in this moment said, I want you to go and speak to the people of North Korea? Would your initial reaction be, let's go, I'm going to get up and we're going to go do this? Or would there be fear and hesitancy and uneasiness in that? So we're seeing Jonah and he's there and God's calling him, I want you to go to this city. And instead of, packing his bags and saying, hey God, here we go, I'm ready, Jonah runs the other way. He runs far away from the situation. He doesn't want anything to do with these people. He thinks in his heart that they are wicked and that really they don't deserve to be saved. They don't deserve God's grace. And what a perspective to be in. So he's running and he decides to get on a boat and just go the complete opposite direction of Nineveh. And as he's on the boat, storms start to happen and the waves crash. And everybody on the boat says, well, we didn't have problems before this guy shows up, so maybe we need to get him off the boat. So they toss Jonah into the sea. Waves crashing, storm all around, and as soon as he hits the water, calm. God is trying to tell him something. So as he's in the water, now here comes the really wild part. A fish, or some people will say a whale, I'll let you debate with your group whether to call it a fish or a whale, swallows him up. Doesn't kill him, doesn't destroy him, but just swallows him. And he's sitting in the belly of a giant fish or whale. Again, feel free to debate that topic. I'll give you a moment. So he's in the belly of the big fish. And all he can do now at this point is pray. So he's praying, God, what would you have me do? I don't know what to do. I don't want to go witness to these people. I don't want to share your grace with them because I believe that they are so wicked. And God eventually has the big fish throw Jonah up onto the shore of Nineveh. He just can't outrun this thing that God has called him to do. So he's there. I imagine he's on the beach. He's covered in whatever is in a whale's stomach. So Jonah now is faced with his task. He goes and he speaks to the people of Nineveh. And wouldn't you know it, they accept the grace of God. And what a moment for celebration. Jonah has fulfilled this thing that God's called him to do, except that in his heart, he still doesn't believe that these people even deserve the grace of God. So he goes away sulking and confused and disheartened, and he sits under a fig leaf. And he's consoled at least by the shade that he's receiving. But suddenly, the leaf begins to wither and die. And he becomes angry. Why is my shade gone? God, how could you do this? And God speaks to him and says, I grew that leaf. I grew that tree. You had nothing to do with that. And yet you care so much that you're losing your shade. You care so much about this vine, this fig leaf. And yet you don't have the same care and heart for the people of Nineveh that I just saved 120,000 people that now have a future and a hope because of me. And so this is where we find Jonah sitting without his shade, sulking, trying to come to terms with what God has just done in this city and the part that he's played in it.
Thanks, James, for sharing the story. And what I loved is that he gave us permission to see this story not just from a literal perspective and not just from an imaginary perspective, but to see the point of the story. Now, for the record, I believe that this story is true. And I believe that Jonah was swallowed by a great fish. I believe it not because the Bible says so, but because Jesus believed it. In Matthew chapter 12, verse 40, he actually addresses this story as he's talking about dying and rising again. And he gives an imagery, he gives an example of Jonah going into the belly of the whale for 3 days and then coming out. And Jesus says that he will die and go into the grave for 3 days and then come back out. And I've learned that anybody that is able to predict their death and their resurrection and then actually die and resurrect, you probably should believe them. So that's why I believe this story is true. But really the point of the story isn't about a great fish. The point of the story isn't about this imaginary situation taking place. The point of the story is, how do you think God deals with you versus how do you think God deals with other people? I got a ticket about a year ago. I'm sorry, but I got a ticket about a year ago. And I remember how frustrated I was. I was going 75 in a 65. And the cop pulled me over and other cars were going faster than me and I was not respectful when he came to the window. Can I see your license and registration? And I just kind of threw it up there. And do you know how fast you were going? No. And I was just not respectful at all. But I remember thinking in my mind, there were so many other people going faster than me. And then hearing this story and hearing James share this story, it reminded me that when it comes to me and my life and my sin, I want grace and mercy and compassion. But when it comes to you, I want accountability, I want judgment, and I want consequence. And that's really what this story is teaching us. That great love and mercy and compassion is available for everybody, even the people that you would put in the category of an enemy. And that love, grace, and compassion gets communicated to your enemies by you. And Jonah didn't like that. In fact, in Jonah chapter 4, verse 2, he says this to God: "This is what I said was going to happen when I was still home. This is why I was quick to flee. I knew that you, God, are gracious and compassionate. You're slow to anger and you're abounding in love. A God who relents from sending calamity. And now, Lord, take my life, for it is better for me to die than to live." How many of us could say that when it comes to us, we just beg God for mercy? We beg God for grace. We beg God for forgiveness. But when it comes to others, we want them to be held accountable. My challenge to you, and I think what this story would challenge us with, is that may we see God in how he treats us. May we see that same behavior, that same character for everyone else. May we be the types of people that run to God in our brokenness, run to God when we need forgiveness, and may we be also people that run to those that we are not fans of, maybe even struggle with, maybe perhaps call them enemies, and offer the same thing that God has offered us.